Welcome to another ASC CPC training video. This video is the fourth in the recipe programming series. In this tutorial, we'll cover recipe pass-through, alarms, and segment messages. In the last video, you finished with the basic recipe. Let's take a look back at the recipe and explain how recipe pass-through works. There are two different attributes that recipe properties can have for passing through segments. There are properties that pass through segments and those that do not. Rates, values, enables, and alarms all pass through to the next segment, while watch items do not. This means that the value you set in segment 2 for the temperature rate will pass through until you change it or exit out. As an example, the temperature rate remains at 5 for the entire recipe because we never change it. The same is true for the temperature value. There's no need to re-enter 350 degrees in the hold segment. The value will pass through until it is changed to 150 in segment 4. Xing a segment out removes the rate restriction. CPC will drive the process without the rate if an X is used. As an example, we used this method for the pressure. The rate will stay constant at 5 psi until segment 5 when we exit out. This will allow CPC to depressurize as fast as possible. The watch items do not pass through. The watch items are only active for the segment in which a value is entered. As an example, once the low TC in segment 2 passes 340 degrees, the watch item passes it to segment 3, and segment 2 watch item is forgotten. Now move on to the alarms section below. In this video, we'll cover the basics of how alarms work. There are two different types of alarms: those that take action and those that are notification only. First, take a look at the minimum part rate. This is an example of an alarm that only notifies. This alarm is used to notify you when the part is not achieving a predefined rate. In segment 2, set it to 3. This is informing CPC that the minimum rate during the cure cycle is 3 degrees Fahrenheit per minute. Next is range. Set this to 150 to 340. This tells CPC that you want this alarm to be active between specific temperatures. In this case, those temperatures are 150 to 340 degrees. If the rate is not met outside of the 150 to 340 range, no action will be taken. Next, we have the grace option. This option is to stop nuisance alarms from occurring. This requires an input for time. This is the amount of time you will allow the condition to exist before an alarm is issued. Enter 5M here. This is now a complete minimum part rate alarm. In summary, this alarm tells CPC to look at the temperature between 150 and 340 degrees to check that the rate does not drop below 3 degrees per minute for 5 minutes before issuing an alarm. You can apply the same methodology to the other similar alarms. Next, move down to the bag pressure alarm. This is an example of an alarm that takes action as well as issuing an alarm notification. This alarm is used to notify you that a vacuum bag has broken and to take a predefined action. First, configure the property in segment 1. Enter greater than 5. CPC will use the default engineering units for this property. In this case, we're telling CPC to watch for vacuum bags exceeding 5 psi. The next property is action on break. This is what we want the vacuum line that is attached to the part that is over the 5 psi to do. This action is predefined by your process. For this demonstration, we will use off. This tells CPC that if a bag pressure exceeds 5 psi, then shut the line off and issue an alarm. Now our recipe is almost complete. We need to go back and add segment messages. In video 2, you learned about segment messages. Move back now and fill out the remaining segment messages for the recipe. We've already filled out segment 1. Segment 2, Heat to 350 degrees Fahrenheit at 5 degrees per minute. Segment 3, 2-hour soak. Segment 4, cool down below 160 degrees Fahrenheit at 5 degrees per minute. Segment 5, depressurize. Typing END in Segment 6 will indicate the end of the recipe. That concludes this tutorial. In the next tutorial in the Recipe Programming series, we'll be covering new revisions, recipe reports, recipe preview, and audit tracking. Thanks for watching.